Masks of Maple Street. Chapter 1. A Fresh Start in Maple Street. The crisp autumn air swirled fallen leaves around Anna's ankles as she unloaded the last box from the moving truck. Her breath puffed out in white clouds, a stark contrast to the vibrant hues of orange and red carpeting the sidewalk. Maple Street, with its rows of Victorian houses and cobblestone paths, held a timeless charm that instantly drew Anna in. It felt like a scene straight out of a storybook, a perfect setting for a fresh start for her and her two children, Lily and Ethan. The divorce had been a whirlwind, leaving Anna emotionally drained yet determined to build a new life for her family. Maple Street, with its tight-knit community and its annual Halloween extravaganza, according to the enthusiastic realtor, seemed the ideal place for her children to make new friends. As Ethan, all of 8, bounced on his toes with excitement, Lily, the more cautious one at 12, looked around with an air of apprehension. Their new house, a charming blue Victorian with a white picket fence, felt like a warm hug. Sunlight streamed through the large bay windows, illuminating the dusty furniture that held the promise of countless cozy evenings. The neighbors, a friendly couple named Mr. and Mrs. Hemlock, greeted them with warm smiles and an invitation to a potluck dinner the following week. "And don't you worry, dear," Mrs. Hemlock had chirped, her eyes twinkling. "We have a grand Halloween party here in Maple Street. It's the highlight of the year." Lily perked up at the mention of Halloween, a flicker of interest replacing her usual reserved demeanor. Ethan, of course, was already planning his costume. As the days slipped by, Anna settled into a comfortable routine. She unpacked boxes, enrolled the children in school, and started exploring the quaint shops lining the main street. The community was welcoming, the pace of life slow and comfortable. There was a sense of belonging here, something they desperately needed. One thing Anna found a bit peculiar, however, was the neighbors' preference for evenings. They never seemed to be out and about during the day. Groceries were left delivered by the porch, and their windows remained stubbornly shut. But then again, Anna brushed it off as a quirk of the older residents. After all, who wouldn't want to enjoy a leisurely afternoon indoors with a good book on a crisp autumn day? Life in Maple Street seemed idyllic, a perfect picture of small-town living. Yet, a subtle unease, a niggling feeling in the back of her mind, refused to be dismissed. Chapter 2. Shadows and Whispers. October days grew shorter, and the once playful breeze carried a sharper edge. The neighborhood, eerily quiet during the day, came alive after sunset. Warm yellow lights flickered on in windows, casting a golden glow on the cobblestone streets. Anna, returning from a grocery run, noticed a peculiar thing. No birds chirped, no stray cats roamed the alleyways, not even a single cricket chirped its nightly song. It was an unsettling silence, an unnatural absence of life. One afternoon, while unpacking boxes in the attic, Anna stumbled upon a dusty leather-bound book tucked away in a forgotten corner. Its pages, yellowed with age, were filled with strange symbols and cryptic writing. Intrigued, she tried to decipher it, but the language seemed archaic and foreign. A chill snaked down her spine, and an inexplicable feeling of dread washed over her. Just then, Lily burst into the room, eyes shining with excitement. "Mom," she exclaimed, "the Hemlocks invited us over for dinner tonight. They're making pumpkin pies." Relief washed over Anna, momentarily pushing the book and its unsettling aura to the back of her mind. Maybe the silence was just her imagination, a product of the changing season. Over dinner at the Hemlocks, the conversation flowed easily. Mr. Hemlock, a retired history professor, regaled them with tales of Maple Street's rich past. However, a flicker of discomfort crossed his face when the topic turned to Halloween. "A bit too much excitement for these old bones," he chuckled, his voice strained. "But you young ones have fun." As darkness descended, the conversation turned towards the upcoming party. This year, Mrs. Hemlock revealed with a theatrical flourish, it would be held at Blackwood Manor, an imposing Gothic mansion at the edge of the woods. A bit creepy, Ethan admitted, a slight tremor in his voice. But cool, too. Anna felt a wave of unease. The thought of a Halloween party in a spooky mansion sent shivers down her spine. Still, seeing the excitement in her children's eyes, she decided to let it go. Perhaps a little adventure was exactly what they needed. Chapter 3. The Invitation. The days leading up to the Halloween party were a whirlwind of activity. Ethan spent hours meticulously crafting his werewolf costume, while Lily, usually reserved, surprised Anna with her enthusiasm for researching the history of Blackwood Manor. According to local legends, the mansion was built by a wealthy recluse in the late 19th century and shrouded in whispers of dark secrets. The unease Anna felt earlier intensified. The silence during the day felt even more oppressive, broken only by the howling wind through the barren trees. One afternoon, while walking home from school, Lily confided in Anna, her voice barely a whisper. "Mom," she said, "have you noticed? It feels like everyone sleeps during the day and only comes out at night." Anna, startled by Lily's observation that mirrored her own growing suspicion, forced a smile. "Maybe they're just night owls, honey." But the seed of doubt was firmly planted. That evening, while helping Ethan with his costume, Anna decided to do some research on Blackwood Manor. Online resources were scarce, but with some digging, she found a dusty newspaper article from the town archives. It spoke of a mysterious fire that had engulfed the mansion decades ago, claiming the lives of its inhabitants. The article ended with an unsettling line: "The cause of the fire remains a chilling enigma." A cold sweat prickled Anna's skin. The more she delved into the history of Maple Street, the more unsettling details emerged. Stories of unexplained disappearances, rumors of strange rituals practiced in the woods on the outskirts of town, all dismissed as mere folklore by the townspeople. The night of the Halloween party arrived, cloaked in a thick blanket of fog. Anna, dressed in a simple witch costume for the sake of her children, felt a knot of apprehension twist in her stomach. They drove to Blackwood Manor, the imposing structure looming out of the darkness like a skeletal hand reaching for the sky. Gargoyles perched on the roof seemed to leer at them in the flickering light of the carriage lamps. The grand entrance doors swung open, revealing a scene straight out of a Gothic novel. The cavernous hall was dimly lit by flickering candles, casting long, macabre shadows across the walls. The air hung heavy with an intoxicating scent, a mixture of incense and something earthy, something primal. Guests dressed in an array of elaborate costumes milled around, their faces obscured by masks or makeup. Despite the festive atmosphere, a strange tension crackled in the air. As Anna mingled with the other parents, she noticed something odd. The neighbors, usually so jovial and welcoming, seemed distant and reserved. They spoke in hushed tones, their eyes flickering nervously towards the shadows. And then she saw a flicker of something unnatural reflected in Mr. Hemlock's eyes as he caught her gaze. It was a fleeting glimpse, but enough to send a jolt of fear through her. Anna's unease grew into a full-blown sense of dread. This wasn't right. Something was terribly wrong in Maple Street, and the Halloween party at Blackwood Manor was just the beginning. Chapter 4. A feast for the eyes, but not the stomach. The unsettling flicker in Mr. Hemlock's eyes stayed with Anna like a bad omen. She excused herself from the small talk and found Lily, who was captivated by a group of children playing a spooky game near the grand staircase. Ethan, on the other hand, had vanished. Panic clawed at Anna's throat. This wasn't a place for children to wander unaccompanied. Pushing through the throng of costumed figures, Anna called Ethan's name, her voice rising above the eerie music that filled the hall. She navigated through dimly lit hallways lined with dusty portraits of stern-faced ancestors. The air grew colder, the scent of incense thicker. A shiver ran down her spine as she realized none of the guests seemed to be eating or drinking from the lavish buffet set up in a large drawing room. Just then, she heard a muffled whimper coming from behind a heavy curtain. Her heart hammered in her chest as she cautiously pulled it back. There, in a dimly lit chamber, stood Ethan, frozen in fear. Before him, a group of figures, their faces hidden behind elaborate masks, stood around a long table. On the table, bathed in an eerie red glow, wasn't a feast for the partygoers, but an unsettling display of raw meat and something darker. A scream tore from Anna's throat. The figures turned, their eyes a chilling, unnatural yellow fixated on her. Panic surged through her. This wasn't a Halloween prank. This was something far more sinister. In that moment, all the unspoken fears, the unsettling whispers of the past few days, coalesced into a horrifying truth. These weren't her neighbors. These were monsters, hiding in plain sight, masquerading as friendly faces while harboring a secret far too dark for words. The figures advanced towards Anna and Ethan, their movements unnatural, predatory. Adrenaline coursed through Anna's veins, drowning out the fear. She had to protect her children. Grabbing a heavy candlestick from a nearby table, she brandished it in front of her, her voice hoarse with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Stay back," she screamed. "Don't you touch them." The room stood silent, the only sound the labored rasping of breaths hidden behind the masks. Then a slow, deliberate chuckle echoed through the chamber. A tall figure, shrouded in a black cloak, emerged from the shadows. His voice, when he spoke, was a guttural rasp. "Ah, welcome, dear neighbor. We were just about to introduce you to the real meaning of Halloween." Chapter 5. A Fight for Survival. Anna's mind raced. This wasn't a dream. These weren't elaborate costumes. The cold, predatory glint in the yellow eyes confirmed her worst fears. She tightened her grip on the candlestick, her only weapon against the advancing figures. But fear wouldn't save them. She needed to think, to find a way out of this nightmare. Suddenly, a memory sparked in her mind. The dusty leather-bound book she found in the attic. It contained strange symbols, yes, but there was also a faint faded illustration that seemed strangely familiar now. It depicted a silver cross, pulsating with an ethereal glow. Could it be? Desperate, Anna glanced around the room. In a corner, half hidden behind a towering grandfather clock, stood an antique display cabinet. A single silver object glinted beneath the dim light, a crucifix, passed down through her family for generations. Hope surged through her. As the cloaked figure took a menacing step forward, Anna lunged for the display cabinet, flinging open the glass doors. With a silent prayer, she snatched the crucifix, its cool metal biting into her palm. A gasp rippled through the room as she held it aloft, directly facing the vampires. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a collective hiss erupted from the masked figures as they recoiled, shielding their faces from the cross. The yellow glow in their eyes dimmed, replaced by a flicker of fear. The cloaked figure, his form seeming to shrink under the crucifix's influence, spoke in a venomous tone. You dare bring this symbol here? Do you know who you're dealing with, human?" Anna met his gaze, her voice surprisingly steady. "I know what you are. Monsters hiding in the shadows, preying on the innocent. This ends tonight." The tension in the room was thick. The vampires, momentarily stunned by the crucifix, seemed to regain their composure. But their movements were hesitant, their predatory confidence shaken. Anna knew this wouldn't last long. She needed to get her children and flee. "Ethan, Lily," she called out, her voice cutting through the silence. "Come here now." Ethan, still frozen in fear, looked at her with wide eyes. Lily, her usual stoicism replaced by a fierce determination, pushed through a group of startled children and rushed to her mother's side. With a desperate shove, Anna knocked over a nearby table, scattering books and papers. The vampires lunged to avoid the commotion, momentarily distracted. Seizing the opportunity, Anna grabbed her children's hands and bolted for the chamber door. They ran blindly through the echoing hallways, the sounds of pursuit close behind. The adrenaline coursing through Anna's veins gave her a burst of strength she never knew she possessed. But they wouldn't outrun the vampires forever. They needed an escape route. As they reached the grand staircase, Lily, her voice laced with terror, screamed, "Dead end." Panic threatened to overwhelm Anna. But as she glanced around, her eyes fell on a large tapestry depicting a hunting scene. With a desperate hope, she ripped the tapestry from the wall, revealing a hidden doorway behind it. "This way," she yelled, pushing Lily and Ethan through the narrow opening. Dust rained down on them as they tumbled into a dark passage. Scrambling to their feet, Anna shoved the tapestry back into place, momentarily blocking the door behind them. They hurried through the passage, their breaths echoing in the darkness. The sounds of pursuit faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. Chapter 6. Escape from Maple Street. The hidden passage twisted and turned, plunging them deeper into the bowels of Blackwood Manor. The air grew thick and stale, the only light flickering from a small lantern Anna had snatched from a wall sconce during their flight. Lily and Ethan huddled close to her, their hands trembling. "Where does this go, Mom?" Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. "I don't know, honey," Anna admitted, her voice hoarse. "But anywhere is better than facing those things." They walked for what felt like an eternity, the silence broken only by the ragged breaths and the occasional drip of water from unseen cracks in the stone walls. Just as despair threatened to consume them, a faint glimmer of light appeared at the end of the passage. With renewed hope, Anna pressed forward. The passage opened into a dusty chamber, moonlight filtering through a small, barred window high above. In the center of the room stood an old wooden chest, its brass hinges tarnished with age. Suddenly, a loud thump echoed behind them. The tapestry had given way. The vampires, their yellow eyes glowing malevolently in the moonlight, stood at the entrance, their fangs bared in a predatory snarl. "There you are," the cloaked figure hissed. "You can't escape us." Anna felt a surge of defiance. They wouldn't give up without a fight. Glancing around the chamber, her eyes fell on the chest. With a desperate hope, she rushed towards it and threw open the lid. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, lay a collection of silver weapons knives, a small sword, and a stake adorned with intricate symbols. Relief flooded her. These were weapons forged to combat darkness, a family heirloom passed down for generations, just in case of emergencies no one truly believed would come. Grabbing a silver knife, Anna brandished it at the vampires. "We will not be your prey," she declared, her voice ringing with newfound strength. "This ends now." A tense standoff ensued. The vampires hesitated, wary of the silver weapons that pulsed with a faint, ethereal light. Finally, the cloaked figure spoke, his voice laced with frustration. "You may have won this round, human, but this isn't over. Maple Street will always be ours. We will have our revenge." With a final menacing glare, the vampires turned and vanished back into the darkness. The silence that followed was deafening. Anna collapsed against the wall, her body drained. Lily and Ethan rushed to her side, burying their faces in her chest. They had survived, but at what cost? Taking a deep breath, Anna knew they couldn't stay. This peaceful neighborhood was nothing more than a den of darkness in disguise. They had to leave, and they had to do it now. Gingerly, she helped her children to their feet. Together, they climbed out of the hidden chamber through the small window, stepping out onto the cold night air. In the distance, the lights of Maple Street twinkled innocently, a facade that hid the monstrous secrets beneath. With a heavy heart, Anna led her children away from Blackwood Manor and the town that had promised them a fresh start. The road ahead was uncertain, but they were free. The warmth of her children's embrace gave her strength. They would find a new beginning, a place where the shadows wouldn't hold such terrifying secrets. As the first rays of dawn painted the horizon, Anna glanced back at Maple Street, a place she now knew was forever tainted by horror. The idyllic facade had crumbled, revealing the truth trust could be a dangerous game, and appearances could be deceiving. But one thing remained certain: her love for her children, a love that burned brighter than any darkness.